When terror struck, one woman's calm and hidden strength revealed an incredible transformation. Sarah stood behind the counter of her café, the sweet scent of cinnamon rolls wafting through the air, mingling with laughter and the buzz of chatter. Her warm smile brightened the gray Chicago afternoon, a comforting glow in the stormy world outside. Little did she know, just beyond her sanctuary, chaos was brewing. The harsh reality of her neighborhood was about to unfold, shattering the peace she had carefully crafted over the years. Autumn leaves danced in the wind, swirling around families as they gathered for their afternoon treats. But then, a jarring crack echoed down the street. Sarah's heart raced. She turned, her breath hitching, as a family she knew well, the Robinsons, rushed past the café, their faces pale and eyes wide with fear. It felt as if time had frozen. The lively café, once alive with laughter, transformed into a haunting silence. Panic clawed at her insides, pressing against her chest like a crushing weight. Just moments ago, change felt far away, but now it loomed like dark clouds above. Her teenage son, Matt, was behind the counter, his skateboard clutched in his hands, confusion shadowing his features. She could see the fire in his eyes react to the chaos outside, a mix of anger and confusion boiling beneath the surface. "Mom, what's happening?" he demanded, his voice tinged with panic, frustration and helplessness bubbling over. She wanted to reach out to him, to calm his rising fears, but instead, she felt her own heart crumbling beneath the weight of uncertainty. "It's going to be okay, sweetheart," she said with all the conviction she could muster. But her own voice felt hollow against the background of chaos. Outside the café, families watched the streets with wary eyes, some leaning toward accusations fueled by fear, while others held steadfast to hope, struggling to keep the community spirit alive amidst the darkness. Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. That night, as fear pooled in the corners of her mind, Sarah resolved to rise above. She opened her doors, offering free meals to families affected by the violence. The café became more than just a cozy spot, it transformed into a lifeboat in the storm. Families began to share more than meals, they shared fears, dreams, and their resolve not to let chaos win. Sarah uncovered a reservoir of strength she never knew she had, lifting spirits, stitching the frayed fabric of their community one meal at a time, but within her newfound hope, cracks began to show. Matt, feeling neglected amidst her dedication to the neighborhood, rebelled, pushing back against her authority. Each confrontation was a blade to her heart, each raised voice an echo of despair. The roots of their connection felt fragile, stretching beneath the weight of the world's chaos. Would they mend what had started to fray, or would they be forever lost in the turmoil of distrust and anger? As Sarah organized a community meeting to confront their fears and seek unity, the stakes climbed high. The weight of leadership pressed hard against her shoulders. Voices grew louder, blaming and accusing. There, at the front of the room, she faced her neighbors, simmering with emotions, and just as she began to speak, silence enveloped the crowd. In that pivotal moment, her heart pounded like thunder. Would her words ignite a flicker of hope? Or would they spiral deeper into despair? With everything hanging in the balance, the streets of her beloved city stood still, waiting for her voice to cut through the darkness. Sarah stood before the crowd, her heart racing as she felt the weight of 100 eyes fixed on her. The room, filled with tension and fear, felt like a suffocating embrace. She drew in a deep breath, the air thick with anxiety. Just moments ago, she was a comforting presence behind the café counter, now, she was the reluctant leader of a fractured community. "Listen, everyone," she began, her voice steady, though the quiver in it betrayed her emotions. "I know we're scared. I am too. But we have to come together to support each other through this. We're stronger together. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Distant, untrusting eyes challenged her words. She could see Mr. Jennings, a neighbor known for his watchful demeanor, folding his arms across his chest, skepticism etched into his weathered face. It made her stomach churn. She knew she had to break through that barrier. Last week, the Robinson family lost their home. We all know this can't continue. If it doesn't affect us directly today, it could tomorrow, she continued, the emotion swelling behind every word. We're neighbors, friends. We are a community. Let us use this cafe as a place of resilience, as a space for hope. The weight of her vulnerability drew an odd power within her. People began to share their own stories, each revelation lighting a path through the darkness. Ms. Hayes, the elderly widow, spoke of seeing threats tucked away behind closed doors. Young adults, previously quiet, voiced their own fears, revealing the deep rifts in their collective spirit, but in the back, amidst the gathering warmth, she sensed Matt's resistance like an icy draft. She caught his eyes shimmering with rebellion, a silent scream. The divide between them felt palpable, hovering in the air like an unspoken truth. The corners of her heart ached only for him, and here she was, holding a community's heart in her hands while her own was breaking. Suddenly, a crash sounded from outside. The crowd gasped collectively, and Sarah's heart sank. Glass shattered only 2 streets down, and an unsettled fear swept like wildfire through the community. Her mind raced. Would she witness another family torn apart tonight? Stay calm. She shouted, finding her voice, her authority re-emerging through clarity. We've faced enough already. We need to focus, get to safety or stay together. Let us make a plan. The murmurs died down into a focused silence. Sarah felt embers of hope igniting as people began to rise, forming small groups, sharing their ideas. It was then something stirred within her, a determination forged deep in her core. And yet, she couldn't glance away from Matt, who stood apart, his haunted expression a mirror to her own growing fears. How could she lead others when she felt she was losing him? The more they rallied, the more she felt the fissures between them deepened. As the meeting drew to a close, Sarah caught wind of the conversations around her, filled with courage but still steeped in uncertainty. She was buoyed by the community spirit, yet the ache in her heart for Matt lingered like a shadow. With one last glance at Matt, determination surged through her. I will not let fear win, she whispered to herself. But as she turned to the crowd, her voice faltered. Didn't she need to win back her son before facing the world outside? Little did she know, a storm was brewing not just outside but within her family, waiting for the right moment to strike. Would her next move bridge the gap, or plunge her deeper into isolation and fear? The crowd began to disperse, but the unease lingered in Sarah's chest like a heavy stone. She stood at the front, her heart still racing as the echoes of whispered fears melted into the dim hum of the café. It felt surreal. One moment she was serving coffee, and now she was trying to hold a community together. She searched the throng for Matt, her throat tightening. As people filtered out, the comforting laughter and chatter that normally filled the café had dissipated into silence. In its place was the sound of worry, punctuated by hushed voices and shifting feet. The world outside loomed larger than ever. Mom, it was Matt's voice, barely audible, but she caught it, sharp as a knife. He stood at the entrance, arms crossed, looking like a storm cloud hanging over her sunshine. Matt, she said softly, moving toward him. I'm glad you're still here. He shook his head, anger flashing in his eyes. You're putting yourself out there like this, you think it'll help? It has to help. She replied, her voice quaking despite her resolve. We have to unite. We can't let fear control us. His brow furrowed, and for a moment, she saw the boy she once knew, innocent and trusting. You don't get it, do you? There's no point. People are scared for a reason. You can't fix everything with speeches. But I can try. She said, desperation creeping into her voice. This was her son. Couldn't he see her heart was in the right place? We need each other now more than ever. We can't fall apart, Matt. He turned away, staring out at the street where shadows danced under flickering streetlights. You're fighting a losing battle, he muttered, his voice cracking. Sarah's heart ached. Matt's pain seemed so far away and yet so close. She wanted to reach out and shake him, show him that hope wasn't just a word, but a lifeline. What if we showed them? What if we banded together? If we don't act, nothing will change. Matt huffed a bitter laugh. You think they'll really listen? They're scared. Mom, people do crazy things when they're scared. The truth hit her like a cold wave. His words echoed within her. She recalled the shattered glass just down the street, the sound still sharp in her mind. Scared people could lash out. Just like him, perhaps. I need you to trust me, she said, her voice dropping to a whisper, pleading with him to see the bigger picture. I'm scared too. But together, we can make a difference. He sighed, a weary look settling in his eyes. You just think we can make it all go away with a little hope? Hope doesn't fix broken windows. Maybe not, Sarah conceded, her voice heavy. But it can hold us together while we pick up the pieces. I need you, Matt. This isn't just about pushing through. It's about leaning on each other. Isn't that what we've always done? She searched his face, hoping to find a flicker of understanding, an acknowledgement that she was still his mother, still that anchor he once knew. Time stretched painfully for both of them. Finally, his shoulders slumped, and he looked back at her, the ice in his gaze thawing slightly. Fine, he finally mumbled. But it won't be easy. Nothing worth having ever is, she replied softly, a flicker of warmth igniting in her heart. They were standing on the precipice of change, both reluctant yet ready, but just as that flame was kindling, a loud crash echoed from outside. The moment shattered, a sudden reminder that their community was on edge. Stay close, Sarah urged, taking a step toward the door. We need to see what's going on. As she stepped out, the fear mingled with the unknown. Would the darkness consume them, or would they find light in shattered trust? Matt followed, his expression a mixture of defiance and uncertainty. Together, they faced the chaos awaiting them. And as they walked, Sarah realized something profound. She might be leading a community, but it was her own family that needed saving first. As the tension built around them, Sarah felt the weight of their uncharted territory. Would they emerge stronger, or would the storm once again tear them apart? The crash was followed by a shout, a panicked voice breaking the night air. Sarah's breath hitched in her throat. She grabbed Matt's arm, pulling him closer as they stepped outside. The café's warm glow faded behind them, replaced by the harsh glare of headlights illuminating a scene that felt surreal. A group of people gathered at the corner, some shouting while others were frozen in shock. A car had skidded into a lamppost, the sound of metal grinding against metal still reverberating through the chilly air. As sirens wailed in the distance, the crowd splintered, voices rising in anger and fear. Mom, let us go back. Matt protested, looking over his shoulder, but Sarah shook her head, her heart pounding in her ears. No. We need to see if they're okay, she insisted, steeling herself as they pushed forward. They reached the edge of the commotion just as a young man stumbled backward, his face pale, eyes wide with terror. He glanced at Sarah, then fell against a nearby wall, trying to steady himself. Sarah felt a pang of recognition. He was the barista from the café across the street. Jess. She called, reaching out as she approached. What happened? He shook his head, his breath coming in quick bursts. I don't know. It just happened so fast. I thought they were going to hit me too. Everyone's scared. Around them, the crowd was a jumble of uncertainty, each person grappling with their own fears. Sarah watched as hands clutched at phones, ready to capture the chaos. News was being shared, some distorted, some exaggerated. The waft of discontent hung thick as the frustration swelled. Matt, she said quietly, glancing at her son who was staring into the crowd, his face pale. We have to help them. He looked at the group, then back to her, his expression caught between fear and anger. What are we supposed to do? We can't fix this. Sarah inhaled sharply, summoning all the strength she could muster. We can be a calming force. We can help them breathe. And maybe we can reframe our reality, starting right here. What? How? Matt's voice trembled, but there was a flicker of curiosity in his eyes. By showing them we're together. By sharing stories, calming the chaos. Sometimes, all people need is to see that they're not alone in their fear. With determination surging inside her, Sarah stepped forward, raising her voice above the clamor. Everyone, listen. She called out, pressing her hands together and trying to stay steady. The voices around her quieted, some turning to look at the woman who had always served them coffee, now standing tall. We're all feeling the weight of this moment. But we cannot let fear divide us. Let us talk, let us share our thoughts and feelings. Together, we can breathe better. Together, we can face this. For a moment, the silence hung heavy. Then, slowly, people began to murmur, sharing their own fears and uncertainties. Matt stared at her, his mouth slightly agape. You really think this will work? I know we can soothe some hearts. Even if it's just one, she replied firmly, feeling a glimmer of hope amid the fear around them. As the first voice emerged from the crowd, filled with emotion, Sarah felt something shift. The tension lifted, but then she heard the sharp crackle of a walkie-talkie in the distance, followed by scattered shouts from authorities urging for crowd control. Her heart raced again. What if they didn't want to listen? What if the chaos turned back on them? Matt's hand gripped hers tightly. Mom, something's wrong, he whispered, but before she could respond, the sound of footsteps on the pavement grew louder, and a group of officers appeared, their faces stern as they began to disperse the crowd. Sarah's heart dropped. Stay calm, one shouted, but the urgency in his voice only fueled the fear mounting in the gathering shadows. Mom, Matt's voice was low, a warning, and Sarah felt that old feeling rise in her, an instinct to protect. Next, she urged, as they moved, leaving with one last glance over her shoulder, aware that this fragile connection could be torn just as easily as it had formed. What would happen next? Would they truly face a storm of suspicion? Sarah knew their courage would be tested, both individually and as a community. And as the sirens drew closer, echoing through the tension, she wondered, could they stand tall amidst the dark chaos? The officers advanced, their flashlights cutting through the haze of uncertainty, illuminating faces twisted in confusion and fear. Sarah's heart raced as they drew nearer, the authority of the uniform stark against the emotional turmoil in the crowd. Stay back. A tall officer barked, his voice firm. We're here to secure the area. Please clear the way. Panic flickered in the eyes of those standing close, and some began to retreat, the urgency in the officer's tone fueling their instinct to flee. But Sarah held her ground, her grip on Matt tightening. We can still help, she whispered to him, determination igniting within her. Instead of retreating, Sarah turned her focus back to the crowd, looking for anyone who needed reassurance. It felt like a scene from a movie: chaos, drama, a fight for hope amidst fear. Soon, another voice broke through, shaky but clear. My brother's still in the car. He's trapped. A young woman cried, her hands clutching her hair as if to pull herself together. I'll go with you. Sarah blurted out, instinctively moving toward the woman, knowing that this was the moment to act. If they could join together, maybe their fear would lessen just a bit. Stay away from the car. An officer shouted, but Sarah didn't stop. She could feel Matt's eyes burning into her back, a mixture of fear and admiration. Please, he's hurt. The woman pleaded, tears streaming down her cheeks. With a deep breath, Sarah caught the eye of the officer leading the scene. We need to help. She pleaded. Someone is trapped. Her gaze was steady, unwavering. The officer's sternness cracked as he studied her for a moment. Fine, but you follow my lead. he instructed, a hint of concern now creeping into his expression. Together, they moved closer to the wrecked vehicle, the twisted metal glittering ominously under the flashing lights. The thrumming of Sarah's heart echoed against the silence surrounding them. She could sense the crowd drawing closer, eyes wide, breaths held. "Just hold on. We're coming." The young woman cried out, her voice laced with desperation as they reached the car. As the officer assessed the situation, Sarah knelt down, peering through the broken window to see a young man slumped over the steering wheel. He looked pale, his eyes fluttering open and shut as he tried to make sense of the noise around him. "I'm here, you're going to be okay," Sarah said, her voice soothing despite the chaos. She felt Matt's hand pressing against her back, giving her strength just when she needed it. "Listen to me, can you hear me?" she continued, softness breaking through the chaos. This was her strength, born from the unyielding connection of empathy, as powerful as it was quiet. The young man blinked against the light. "Help please." His voice was barely there, but hearing him felt like a small victory. As they awaited the paramedics, Sarah kept talking, one hand reaching between the broken glass. "You're going to get out of there. You're not alone," she promised, leaning closer, feeling the warmth of hope swell between them. Matt's voice broke through her focus. "Mom, the crowd, they're not just watching. They're actually." Sarah turned to see a few people stepping forward, bolstered by her resolve. They, too, wanted to help, collapsing the wall of fear that moments before had kept them disconnected. Breaths were steadied, and hands reached out to hold one another. A small group formed around Sarah, united in strength. The sirens grew louder, the flashing lights intensifying, but amidst it all, an invisible bond emerged from the chaos. It was a connection that transcended the fear. A community was beginning to awaken from its hesitation, to rise in the face of uncertainty, but Sarah couldn't shake the worry from her heart. Would it be enough? As the first paramedics arrived, rushing to their aid, Sarah could feel the shift. But would the growing unity last? Or would the chaos pull them apart once more? Questions swirled and hope flickered, but one thing was clear: what started as fear was melding into something stronger. Something powerful. "Stay with me," she whispered to the young man, holding his hand tightly, her own heart beating with the rhythm of growing courage. Little did she know, the real storm was only just beginning. The paramedics arrived in a flurry of movement, their professionalism cutting through the chaos like a knife. They rushed to the car, their expressions serious but focused. Sarah could see them talking, quickly assessing the situation while the crowd watched with bated breath. "Ma'am, please step back," one of them said firmly, but Sarah didn't budge. She couldn't. Not when the fate of the young man depended on them acting swiftly. The young woman beside her whimpered and clutched Sarah's arm, anchoring both of them as reality sank deeper. "They'll get him out," Sarah reassured her even as uncertainty gnawed at her own gut. The paramedics moved efficiently, their movements confident. A soft siren echoed in the distance, more help was on the way. Suddenly, a commotion erupted from the crowd. A man surged forward, shouting, "That's my brother. Get him out." Panic surged through Sarah's veins as she recognized the desperation in his voice. "Hey, you can't," an officer began, but before he could continue, the man broke free, rushing toward the car. Sarah's heart pounded as fear flared again. What would happen if he got too close? "Stop!" she yelled, instinct taking over. She surged forward to grab his arm, holding on tightly. "You can't. They need space." He stopped, his face a mask of anguish and frustration. "I can't lose him. You don't understand." A ripple of tension passed through the crowd, confusion intermingling with fear. But Sarah felt a flicker of determination rise within her. "I do understand. We all feel it. If you don't let them help, he could," she stammered, unable to voice the worst fears. The man looked at her, desperation pulling at his features. There was a brief moment where the world stilled. "We have to believe," she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. Let them work. They can bring him back to us. Tears filled his eyes, but slowly, he nodded, stepping back to join the growing group of onlookers. Absorbing their collective energy, Sarah sensed an unspoken bond forming. Each soul was holding on to hope, threading their fears together in a tapestry of resilience. She felt a squeeze on her shoulder. Matt, steady as a rock. You're doing good, Mom. His voice was calm, yet it surprised her. Even amidst the chaos, he was calm. Her heart swelled with pride. He was right there with her in this storm. The paramedics worked with a fury of skill, and soon they managed to pry open the door, a rush of air billowing outward. Sarah held her breath as they carefully removed the young man, his breaths faint and trembling. The sight dashed her hopes and fueled them simultaneously. They laid him on the stretcher, and suddenly, he winced, eyes fluttering open to the blinding lights. Stay with me. One of the medics urged, pressing a hand to his shoulder as they maneuvered him toward the waiting ambulance. The crowd watched in a tight-lipped silence, breaths held in anticipation. This young man, once a stranger, now became part of their collective story, part of their shared community. I need to talk to him. Sarah called out suddenly, urgency in her voice. She stepped closer, drawn by an invisible thread. Please, just 1 second. But the medics were already moving, rushing him into the ambulance. Ma'am, we're doing everything we can. One of them replied. As they loaded him in, their eyes met for a split second. His were filled with confusion and a flicker of hope. You're going to be okay, Sarah mouthed, even as doubt flickered across her mind. Matt grabbed her hand tightly, grounding her as the crowd slowly dispersed around them, some still in shock, others whispering uncertainties among themselves. Mom, what if he started? But Sarah silenced him with a look. She could feel the walls of fear creeping in, but she wouldn't let that night become a prison for them. We won't let it end here, she insisted, determination pooling in her chest. As the ambulance roared to life and sped away, leaving behind echoes of sirens and shouts, Sarah felt something shift inside her. A resilience was awakening, raw and fiercely protective. But deep down, she wondered what would happen when they all went home. Would this feeling last? Little did she know, the night was far from over. And with it, the greatest challenge was yet to be revealed. The night air was thick, heavy with tension, and the harsh glare of the ambulance lights flickered like a beacon against the darkness. Sarah stood frozen, rooted to the spot. In that moment, the world seemed to spin in slow motion around her, and she could still hear the distant wail of the sirens, an unsettling reminder of the trauma that had just unfolded. Mom. Matt's voice pulled her back. She looked down at him, his eyes wide, reflecting confusion. There was a storm brewing just beneath his surface, a maelstrom of fear he desperately wanted to voice. We need to go home, he whispered, glancing back toward the retreating ambulance. The worry wrapped around her heart like a vice. She could feel it, the unyielding need to protect her son from everything, especially the unknown. No. The word escaped her before she could filter it. We're not just going to leave. Not yet. Matt searched her face, trying to understand. But Mom, what if he doesn't make it? I don't want to think like that, Sarah replied, yet that dark thought clung to her mind. The fear was almost palpable, but she pressed against it, refusing to let the shadows take hold. A small group lingered nearby, sharing nervous glances, the energy charged with a mix of hope and despair. Sarah noticed the young woman who had initially stood beside her, still clinging to her own sense of helplessness. Their eyes met, and in that brief connection, an understanding became clear. They were all grappling with the same haunting question: what happens next? Can we do something? Sarah thought aloud, the idea forming as soon as the words slipped out. We can't just stand here. Matt raised his brow, curiosity piqued. What do you mean? What if we come together? Support each other? We could reach out, organize something. Her words spilled out, full of urgency. A small flicker of determination sparked in his eyes. Like a vigil. For him. Yes. Exactly. When the night is darkest, that's when we shine the brightest," she said, a fire igniting within her. The thought of gathering the community, of sharing their collective strength, soothed the raw edges of her own fear. "Here?" he asked, glancing around. "Why not?" Sarah took a deep breath, inhaling the cool night air as if it could clear her mind of the chaos. "All these people, they're here for the same reason we are. Let us bring them together." With newfound purpose, they began to rally those nearby. Word spread quickly, fueled by urgency and hope. It wasn't long before more families joined, the bonds of shared experience weaving them together. They gathered in a circle, flickering candles illuminating their faces. As the first candle was lit, Sarah felt the warmth radiating in the small space. People spoke softly, sharing stories of resilience and moments of impact. It wasn't just about the young man who had been hurt, it was about all of them, their fears, hopes, and the very notion of community. "Maybe we should write him a note," one woman suggested, holding a slip of paper in her trembling hands. They all nodded, quickly jotting down thoughts of love and encouragement and tying the papers to the candles with gentle hands. In that sacred moment, Sarah felt a shift. They were no longer just spectators, they had become an army of light in the darkness. The anxiety that clawed at her ached less, replaced by a sense of shared solidarity. Just as they sounded a countdown to light the candles, the sound of a second ambulance echoed through the night. It stopped nearby, and a fresh wave of energy surged through the group. "Do you think," Matt started, eyes alight with hope. Before he could finish, the doors swung open and a medic stepped out, glancing around nervously. "Is there a Sarah here?" The questions lingered in the air, electric with possibility, leaving them all on edge. "Mom, that's you," Matt whispered, his face a mix of excitement and fear as all eyes turned toward her. Her heart raced, a beat of uncertainty echoing in her chest. What news did this medic carry? Gathering her courage, she stepped forward, heart pounding. "Yes. I'm Sarah." The medic took a deep breath, an ocean of emotions swirling behind those eyes. "We have an update about the young man." A tense silence enveloped them all, the weight of the moment heavy, fraught with the promise of revelation. Would this moment bring hope or despair? From across the circle, the flickers of candlelight danced, a flicker of what could be. The medic's gaze pierced through the flicker of candlelight, steady yet unsure. Sarah felt every heartbeat in her ears as she waited, every moment stretched into an eternity of dread. What's the news? She finally managed to breathe out, her voice barely above a whisper. The medic glanced down at her clipboard, biting his lip. "The young man," he began, hesitating just enough to sharpen the air around them, "he's stable now. They managed to control the bleeding and he's been moved into surgery." A collective breath released from the crowd, a soft exhale that pulled them all together. Relief washed over Sarah, but it was tinged with the shadow of uncertainty. "Stable?" she echoed, scrambling to understand the implications. "Is he going to be okay?" The medic nodded, pulling in a breath as he continued, "The doctors are hopeful. It'll be a long recovery, but he's fighting." Matt's grip tightened around her hand, the silent squeeze filled with a child's desperate need for assurance. She wrapped her fingers around his, and warmth surged between them. For a moment, it felt like the chaos surrounding them faded, replaced by a fragile hope. "We should go to the hospital," Sarah said, her heart now set on action. "He might need to know people care." The flickering hope of their vigil washed over her like a comforting balm, igniting her purpose as she glanced at the faces in the circle. "Can we all come?" one woman asked, her eyes glimmering with a newfound spark. "Show our support together?" "Absolutely," Sarah replied, her conviction blossoming. "Let us show him he's not alone." A murmur of agreement rippled through the crowd. Families began to gather their candles, but Sarah felt an unexpected weight in her chest. The thrill of hope was palpable, yet she couldn't shake the nagging fear of what had loomed before. What if his fight was more difficult than they could prepare for? As they moved in a unified group toward the hospital, Sarah glanced back at the dwindling light of their vigil. It felt surreal to be shifting from fear and anxiety to hope and action, each step echoing the hope they were carrying to that young man. Every face reflected the same mixture of apprehension and determination, a community unwilling to let darkness win. Arriving at the hospital, dim lighting spilled out into the parking lot, a stark contrast to the ominous night sky above. Sarah held Matt's hand tightly, their palms pressed together with all the reassurance she could muster. Inside, the atmosphere shifted, the sterile scent of antiseptic filled the air, mingling with an undercurrent of tension. She felt her breath catch as they approached the reception desk, where a nurse greeted them with a practiced smile that couldn't hide her own worry. "Can I help you?" the nurse asked, her pen poised over a clipboard. "We're here for the young man, the one brought in after the accident," Sarah said, her voice steadier now. The nurse's demeanor turned serious. "Please take a seat, the family is currently being consulted." Sarah felt the words wrap around her like a cold blanket. Family. A tight knot twisted in her stomach. Would they have the strength to share in the good news she hoped for? She looked around, facing the gathering of familiar faces from the vigil. "Come on," Matt whispered, pulling on her hand. "Let us focus on him. He's going to be okay." His untainted belief ignited a small flame of hope in her chest, but the haunting question nagged in the back of her mind. "Do you really think he'll be alright?" she asked Matt, uncertainty creeping into her voice. The answer came before he could respond. A doctor appeared, his expression unreadable as he approached them. "Are you here for the young man?" "I need to speak with you," he said, his tone somber. The one small flame of hope sputtered, swallowed by the density of dread pooling in her gut. Had they come all this way just to receive more bad news? What will he say? Sarah thought desperately. As the doctor prepared to speak, the weight of the moment thickened, leaving them all on the edge of an anticipated truth. The doctor shifted his gaze, assessing the group before him. "I wish I had better news," he began, the words heavy and deliberate. Sarah felt the blood drain from her face. What could possibly be worse than stable? She started, but the doctor held up a hand. "He's currently in surgery," he explained, his voice steady despite the gravity of the situation. "There was significant trauma. The next few hours are critical. We're doing everything we can." As he spoke, Sarah felt a wave of dizziness wash over her. The doctor's calm demeanor contrasted sharply with the storm swirling inside her. She tightened her grip around Matt's hand, feeling the warmth of his tiny fingers, reminding her of what was at stake. "Can we see him?" a voice called from behind her. It was a man, clearly the boy's father, eyes filled with a mixture of hope and heartbreak. "I'm afraid family only, at this time," the doctor replied gently. Ignoring the disappointment in the man's eyes, he added, "I'll keep you all updated on progress." People stood in stunned silence, a heavy weight hanging around them like a thick fog. Sarah could see the glimmer of tears in some eyes, her own emotions a chaotic mix of fear and determination. After the doctor departed, she turned to the crowd. Their vigil had brought them together, and now, facing uncertainty, they needed that unity more than ever. "We have to support each other," she urged, her voice rising above the quiet murmurs. "We need to hold on to hope. I believe he can pull through, and we're here to make sure he knows that." Matt glanced up at her, his big eyes searching her face for reassurance. "You really think he'll be okay?" "I wouldn't be here if I didn't," she insisted, ruffling his hair. Others began to nod, encouragement flickering across tired faces. Sarah slowly assessed her surroundings. A women's group had formed off to one side, their whispers mingled with the sounds of the hospital, the beeping monitors, the shuffle of nurses, and the muffled tones of conversations behind closed doors. "Let us light candles, just as we did before," Sarah suggested, her heart boldening with purpose. "We can bring them to the waiting room and let the family know they're not alone. And if he wakes up, he'll see we're all rooting for him." A young woman added, igniting a ripple of enthusiastic agreement. As they gathered candles from their bags, Sarah felt a renewed energy pulse within her. Each flicker of light stood for courage, each flame a reminder of collective strength. Once they finished, Sarah led the small procession to the waiting room, candlelight flickering across anxious faces. They arranged the candles in a semicircle, illuminating their dedicated expressions and warming the restless air. Suddenly, the door burst open, and the doctor returned. "He's out of surgery," he announced, and a sudden hush fell over the room. "He's on a ventilator for now, but he's responding well. I know that's not much, but he's made it through the first big hurdle." Relief washed over the crowd like a tide. Sarah could hardly breathe as the feeling swelled within her, fear lifting to be replaced by elation. They had come together to support a stranger, and in that moment, they felt transformed, a community woven tighter by shared experience and hope. But what would the next steps be? What if he had long-term struggles ahead? The questions swirled as they basked in the glow of victory. There was still much to overcome, and the journey had only just begun. The next day dawned with an unusual brightness, as if the sun itself was celebrating the small victories of the previous night. A matured sense of hope hung in the air, the kind that brought a cautious smile to Sarah's face. As she unlocked the café doors, the familiar waft of cinnamon and coffee welcomed her inside, yet today, something felt different. The café was now a bustling hub not just of caffeine and pastries, but of resilience and unity. Families filtered in as word spread that the young man, Jamie, was stabilized and recovering. Sarah's heart swelled with pride watching the community come together. As the patrons, once just fleeting customers, sat down shoulder to shoulder, they shared stories woven with laughter, tears, and an undercurrent of newfound camaraderie. All around, laughter mingled with conversations, creating a symphony of healing in her café. "I can't believe we did it," Matt remarked, a smile breaking over his teenage face as he helped his mother prep food in the kitchen. The rebellious storm cloud that had shadowed his spirit seemed to lift, revealing glimpses of the boy Sarah had known full of light and warmth. "We did," Sarah affirmed, her heart soaring as she handed him a tray. "And it's just the beginning." Matt looked out into the main area where Ms. Hayes was serving hot cocoa to children, while Mr. Jennings contributed by fixing chairs for the growing number of visitors. Families shared their joys and fears, and in that moment, they became not just neighbors, but the backbone of a community emerging from darkness. Yet, just as Sarah felt the buoyancy of this unity, the door swung open, revealing Jamie's older brother, a mix of gratitude and exhaustion etched across his face. "Is Sarah here?" he asked, searching the room. The café fell silent, every pair of eyes trained on Sarah as she stepped forward. "That's me," she said, her throat thickening. "Thank you," he whispered, words tumbling out like a waterfall. "For last night, for everything. Jamie knows you fought for him." It gave him strength to know he wasn't alone. Tears threatened to spill as Sarah clasped her hands together. "It's not just me. We're all here for him. We're family," she said, voice trembling yet filled with certainty. As if drawn by an invisible thread, Matt crossed the café and stood beside her, pride radiating from him. In that moment, Sarah realized this wasn't merely about helping just one person, it was about forming bonds and healing together. The brother nodded slowly, absorbing the weight of those words. "We'd like to invite you and the other families to visit him. He needs to see all the faces of the people who cared," he added, hope shining brightly through the clouds of uncertainty. "Of course," Sarah beamed, glancing around at the encouraging nods of others. "We'll make it a day of encouragement." The warmth in her chest spread through her limbs as she organized the visit, gathering families under the glow of hope once more. They poured out of the café, laughter mingling with planning, anticipation crackling through the air. The hospital, with candlelight flickering from the previous night still dancing in her mind. The moment the group entered Jamie's room sent ripples of tenderness flowing around them. His tired eyes glistened with surprise and recognition as they surrounded his bed. Sarah felt an overwhelming sense of purpose rush over her, unifying their collective emotions. "Look who's here, buddy," the brother said softly, beaming with pride at his younger sibling. Jamie's face broke into a weary yet genuine smile, and in that instant, Sarah knew the bond they had forged would hold stronger than any fear. "We're here for you, Jamie," Sarah said, her voice steady and confident. "We've got your back." One by one, they shared their stories of fear and strength, filling the sterile room with warmth and light. Matt and Sarah stood side by side, exchanging glances that spoke volumes how proud they were to be part of something bigger than themselves. The barriers once defining their lives were melting away, replaced by the shared struggles and triumphs they now navigated together. As they took turns holding Jamie's hand, a hush filled the room, settling into their hearts, reinforcing their bonds. "Thank you for lighting our way," Jamie whispered, squeezing Sarah's hand gently. In those words, she felt the culmination of the journey they had taken together, the evidence of light slowly brightening their world. As they left, Sarah couldn't help but smile at Matt as he leaned into her, whispering, "We did good, Mom. We really did." "Yes, we did," she replied, heart swelling with pride. And in that brilliant moment, amid the chaos and uncertainty, Sarah realized the transformation had only just begun. They had faced the storm together, and now there was no doubt they would shape the future, united as one. Together, they would nurture that light, fostering connection and unwavering spirits through every challenge that lay ahead. As Sarah looked out into the new day, she thought of the weight of fear, and how it had turned to courage. And it was only the beginning of her community's incredible journey. Now, I want you to join the journey too. Subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss exclusive stories like this one. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and help us grow. Comment below your reactions and feelings about this emotional transformation. And please, share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this inspiring story. This is the moment to show your support, and remember, only true fans understand the importance of keeping the light alive through your engagement. Don't wait not even one more second, let us spread hope together.